n'y a pas d'anglais ou de la musique. C'est vraiment
Dagpo, Dagpo. Так тут下去。Так通的呀，我是。Dagpo做出来，他顶的配给长满了，但蛮迷茫，我休息配置，这都这是像长满了呢，被古巴前边那呢，这些的历史都属于是。
Today there are a lot of people present, and first I would like to greet you all respectfully in the Tibetan fashion by saying Tashi Dili. I hope you're not too hot.
먼저 파수 구두제제 깨지시에니 파수 둘 특히는 배 둘째 둘이 다 쉬고들 때 교진된 바로부터 교진된 덴베 삼루티 술이 예비이니 디가는 알아서 로답제 미진난 딘낭신 지투이는 약슈디어리스.
Like I said, since you're quite a lot of people are present, and of course each person has their own view, their own ways of seeing things, and ideas about various questions, and the advantage of this kind of gathering is that to be able to exchange and about one's differences of views, but the idea is, though, of course, that each one be objective and not subjective regarding what is said, and trying to evaluate what is said and to determine whether it's accurate or not just persist in one's own personal views. Because of their own. I believe that what's most important in one's life is to act in a manner that is beneficial and kind and beneficial towards others, and doing your best at the same time to avoid doing anything that is harmful or hurtful to others.
The
subject that was announced for today's talk is a little bit complicated.
La solitude, non se attiene better, Chedong Zuta, sometimes to say,
So the title that was given to this talk today was something a little bit complicated. It's how to deal with one's feelings of loneliness by reflecting on karma, the law of karma and its effects, and on interdependence.
Solitude said, "This so chigo in bed now of this marbe. So chigo in bed now of shards, my key was younger user. Then this younger user that mean Damidamangu, some don't Daminda younger. Penang of Cheshavina. Peasant some Korgumir service do. Chicken are some dandan or in Singribatangan, Chig Karjuri, Idealist Surge Tagaste every something mevta. Nalti Kangeti Mete Visurge do.
So the term solitude or loneliness is used in announcing this talk, and I imagine that it means that it's a feeling that of being alone that people can have, and which is a cause of suffering for them, of discomfort and feelings of ill at ease. So this idea of loneliness or being alone is something that's not a problem that I can really conceive of, in the sense that he's never had that feeling before. Being alone, but not feeling. He's, of course, being alone is fine with him, but he's never had this problem of feeling lonely. Maybe Rinpoche says, and maybe he doesn't have the right attitude, or is missing some link, in his mind. Maybe he's wrong about this, but that's how he feels.
No.
So it's a little bit difficult for him to explain this experience that he has never had. Rinpoche says. So it's a little bit. I'm a little bit at a loss as to what to explain to you, because so I think the best perhaps is that I ask you, to one of you, or maybe a few of you, to who might have had this experience of feeling lonely, and it would be good if you could explain a little bit of your experience. Maybe I can help you to then.
Est-ce que vous pourriez avoir la gentillesse de nous décrire la situation et après quoi on pourra réfléchir tous ensemble? Parce que là l'idée c'est quand même d'échanger.
So of course the idea is that there should be some kind of exchange between myself and the rest of you, and so that's why it would be good if one of you could describe this difficulty that you might be experiencing. I'm sure that some of you might have had to face this problem. Otherwise, why would you be here? It seems that nobody wants to say anything about this. Or maybe I'll hear somebody.
Peut-être que certaines personnes font la différence entre solitude choisie et solitude imposée.
So maybe this it would be good to explain the difference between something when you choose to be alone, as compared to having to be alone when you don't want to be. I can imagine very easily what it is to choose to be alone, as to being alone imposed upon me. I find it difficult to understand how could someone impose being alone on someone.
Oui, alors je me disais que en Occident, on a beaucoup dans l'éducation des enfants, on les berce avec les contes de fées, les histoires d'amour qui se terminent par ils vécurent heureux et eurent beaucoup d'enfants. Et les jeunes qui n'arrivent pas, les jeunes et les moins jeunes d'ailleurs, qui n'arrivent pas à trouver de compagnon ou de compagne dans leur vie, peut-être que c'est ça quand on parle de la solitude.
So this person has said that young children are told bedtime stories when they're young, and fairy tales and so on. It always usually ends happily. The princess met the prince and they lived happily ever after, that sort of thing. And then there are people in their lives who don't have that kind of happy ending, in the sense that they don't manage to find a partner, a companion in their lives, and therefore maybe because of that the way they were conditioned when they're young by these tales, that they feel that something is lacking.
Daba yin tu di kangen di inji mi chi tessigri. Tangbu pe karshuri chi kyokjemi ni tu pugu su chik che chik tu lo chik ni ching go khordebe suru chi kiburub ju yorbata kiburub ju yore. Tini kandi kale chi to khore nrodang ki pugu 파문님도 딱도 대세야지 할미 요마르반다와 켜는 요마르바 때는 로그를 봐 콘조 로드 때는 파문 조직자는 지고 레벨 나오던데 샤르스기를 봐 티샤르스기를 승도스
Of course, different societies function differently, and for example, in this part of the world, it's quite when a person founds a family, they have a partner, they maybe have children together, and they live as a family together for a certain number of years. But then, as the children grow up, then they slowly move away, because most often there's no, the children do not remain within their parents' circle, for their entire lives in this part of the world. So it could be that I understand, therefore, that the empty nest syndrome, which is a kind of feeling of being alone after having lived with others, I can perfectly well conceive that might be a feeling that is difficult for some. They've had a habit of living in a certain manner, and then that way of living has changed, and therefore they find it difficult.
Ben 지단 샤조베 롱베이나 샤조베 롱보다 캐번도야 별 롱보를 비는 가면에 주시야기었다 단대 배바준내 줄 근데 시우메 가면 주기는 페이지를 미산 상마 냠도 되게 봐 냠도 돼 캠버티 페이터 코르냠도 되니 코리 믹스에 레가도 지금 말디 이니 깨질라브 셴버줄 깨질라브 셴버줄 캠버줄이야 셰브지 슈 든데스님도 대제 그런도 전부를 제제 기부르지 여러다디 근데지 말을 자도 통용 통용다 디야 기부디에 쩨만 없지만도 문에 전에 기부지 인사 말했음도
It will be different in more traditional societies, like in old Tibet. Don't mean the Tibet of these days. I'm speaking of what I observed in my country when I still lived there. The families were extended. In other words, the parents had children, and the children remained under their parents' roofs. And there was a large, family community which continued to live together for most of their lives, several generations living together, and doesn't mean that the parents continually necessarily working. When they got older, it was more the younger generation who looked after their parents, and the older generation, the parents and so on, and grandparents, they had a role of guiding and giving advice to the younger generation. And there was this feeling, therefore, of living in a group, which may have given some feeling of happiness, but I don't believe that kind of happiness, or what they perceive to be happiness, could really be qualified as genuine happiness.
Est-ce qu'il s'agit là d'un bonheur véritable? Ça, c'est une autre question, et en fait, la réponse pencherait plutôt vers la négative.
Tatikaris Juvin, Neka Givna Yore Tende Temporary. Rembati Reti in Nimati, Gambati Nimizin Rorbata. Till Tokochuni or Mansami Shingi already. Shingi already did that for the Chassin of Remando Mingsek till the same day that she Paman Temple so into the Yungri, the Ini Shirachi. Tintisi or the Tamanum Jabsik. Sometimes have to shit out in the Sigmari.
And of course, when the older generation got older and older, well, of course, eventually they died, and that meant a separation and a loss, a feeling of loss, which could induce a feeling of painful feeling in the younger generations, but not so necessarily, but for some, for sure, because the younger generation, anyways, they are aware that this is the nature of things, is that the elders should disappear and the younger be left alone after them. Of course, there would be some kind of feeling of regret of having had this loss.
다 그렇게 tipsik samtang이나 먼저 충두감 공부를 대버봐. 공부를 대서 미망군님도 대어리 당부 밤주 공부를 대도 미숨께서님도 요리. 되는 다 우터선 침벌이 미투게 둥기님도 대어리. 대도 진짜 지구 인선배 나오르부터 폐절 균지 용금에 소리. 뒤주세요 말봐. 삼당 가르스는 로존체 로존체 배제 심 배제 겨 초ral 진짜베도 딘디제 대두 딘디 삼 거야 뒤주견에 매대베 소리도 띵산도 대두.
Of course, my life experience is quite perhaps different from the most of you, in the sense that at quite a young age I entered my first monastery of Bamche, and there was a community of about 300 monks. And after several years there, I left that monastery and went to Dagpo monastery, and there was even more monks in that monastery, around 600, and it was a relatively large community. And my life at that time and the life of all those around me was very, very full, in the sense that there was no time to ask oneself questions about feeling lonely or not. They had a very intense study program and many things to memorize, debating sessions, study classes, and so forth. And so it was no even sort of opportunity, so to speak, to even ask myself this kind of question: do I feel lonely or not?
어때 던져주지. 던져주지 레샤 제비인산다디 단다 직다긴직 미지 랍송한테 받지는 좋아. 단다 받지는 솔리튜드 시투직대 누구도 직 상당히 열봐. 열봐. 때리때 이내 딜은 주 상당 그렇다. 또 인단 그 간제제 열봐다. 솔리튜드 지고 임베 나오셔봐. 지고 멤버스 가르도요 선지고 멤버스 되게 열받아. 대두디 용시브레 말에. 지고 멤버스 용시브레 말에 디삼당도야.
So the topic of this talk it indicates that being alone seems to be a problem for many. It is something that's experienced negatively, and so we need to therefore ask ourselves: feeling lonely or being alone, is it actually feasible? Is one ever truly alone?
Il faut vraiment se poser la question: peut-on ne pas être seul?
제비 인san 딱 레그 로당 콘삼땅이나 지구 멤버직 용주시라 갈래가오르 봐. 지구 멤버직 용주 갈래가오르 가르스는 수수 레츠사 기도 지구 깨브레 나도 지구 나게요리 시도 지구 신로요리면도 냠도 상원로야 말봐. 띵문 숨르바다디.
Or put it another way, actually it's the other way around. Is it ever possible to not ever be alone? It seems that, given the lives we live, that we are, in fact, for the most part, alone. In the sense that, due to our karma, we are born alone. When we get sick, most often we are alone as well. And when we die die alone as well. We don't lie, we'll die with a lot of other people around us. That's rarely the case. So is it possible to ever not be alone, in fact?
Objectivement parlant, chacun ne serait pas, d'une certaine manière, seul.
Tinita disignoa pasu tuni indépendant exercedor. Riba indépendant. Indépendant c'est à dire dichon samdang ini 직질 pen 현당 뜬 나서 중으로다. 나는 또 현다서 중으로도 직질 맞도 지금 현당 켜는 맞도 나서 지금 켜는 요말 봐.
So that's in terms of karma. Now, in terms of interdependence, how do we exist? What we are is something that exists in relationship to something that is not us. When we think I am, it's always in relation to what I am not, or what to something or someone else. So others, the notion of others also depends on another group or on oneself. There is a kind of interdependence, therefore, automatically, when we think of how we exist. We exist only in relation to others. Our existence depends on others.
Mangas dosun rogi ormando shibtu samtan ngas ngasati karri samtan harvada manju subuti ngamare manju semde ngamare tini timayimbe manju tiglugi chashi shinda tiginde chaza ngamarvada ngamare.
Now, we exist and we conceive ourselves as existing, but we do not very often examine how we exist, what we are, what the I that I am, in the sense I am, consists of. We think, well, I'm going, I'm coming, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, but this I that we conceive of as being us, is it? Is it to be? Is it to be identified as our body? Is it to be identified as our mind? Or is it to be identified as one part of our body? We cannot say that we are our body. We cannot say that we are our mind. So there's not one aspect of our being that we can call specifically the I that we imagine in relation when we think I am or I am doing this and that.
Sometimes you're Kanshurita Samtonda and Ramenda Yuvin the Tikin Shuba. Tikin Shubri Mandutsun Dor Tubina, Dor Tubina, Social Tiki Karishore, Chigu in some Samut Koriondu, Koriondu Tiki, Ranil Pe Tungi Makivs Jun Digiori, Ranil Kangim Tungi, Sem Tungi Makivs. Chigu in some Chigu in Tungi Makin River with the Keo Marva. The Jigu sambal ten to make in tit and that can you mean do. The cover maps Rishasangudu.
So, thus to give you an idea of how we conceive of our I, and there, of course, there's many different ways to view how we exist. In relation to our body, in relation to our mind, and so forth. But it's difficult to say that we assimilate what we are to just our mind or our body. But now we're talking about the feeling alone. The fact of being alone is a situation which is simply a neutral situation, but it's when that situation does not pose any problems for us. That's fine. But when we feel alone, and that feeling is unpleasant for us, we find it difficult, then I believe it's not something that is useless and harmful to us. It doesn't help to not accept the situation.
지고인 삼배선로 코르겐롱 마 코르겐롱 말은서 가르제니 야리 여러 시중한주 샘게 삼 땅땅디 네 미지단디 단타파톨론 다가스 심버리 단다가스 대유미 신기요 말이 대링 될라베 류당아단 이 상명원베 심진 펜 더버지 용쇼 심지 탐제 대워드 대위베 심지 탐제 대워드 대위 귤 로지 용쇼스 Tendeci samnucin anjuta karshuri atapte javina tatipe pendo sishudiyori.
So instead of refusing to accept this situation, would it not, and which was a cause of painful experience for us, would it not be better to think differently, try and change our concerns, and to develop a wish to render how time we have left to live in this life useful and beneficial to others? How can we live our lives in a constructive manner, in a beneficial manner, achieve something useful to oneself, but also to as many other living beings as possible? Since you have a certain amount of time to left to live in your life, and to making the wish, therefore, to that all you do, whether it's in your with your mind, with in your speech, with your body, physically, in other words, that all these activities of the three levels may contribute to others' well-being. Making that wish and trying to realize it would be much more useful than to sitting in a corner and feeling badly about your situation of being alone.
제비인상 띠지도 가르쇼레 드님베 탐제 가르쇼레 따베 동네기 귤민도와 신 동네 귤민도와 대위 귤인 교와쇼 삼당을 디땅도 드님베 베 심지시하는 베 가르쇼레 류란느 류 신기 류한 너버지야의 파샤네 너버지야의 파샤네 베 너버지야의 파샤네 베 딘데기 베 신달 베 네베 삼루 야마키 베지긴 인삼버 삼루 지금 너 삼루 야마키 베지긴 인삼버 삼단이 야오요르스.
So you make the wish, therefore, so that all your activities, be it that the physical, verbal, or mental, may not induce any suffering in others, and that you may never do anything either of these ways that would be hurtful to others, and on the contrary, that all your actions, be they physical, verbal, or mental, may be constructive and helpful to others, and that means doing your very best to actually not just have that intention, but to act accordingly, and be using your all your time to avoid in a way that is helpful to others. 먼저 내가 지단다 때서 신다 지단다 맞춤이 용도 될베 지금 삼로 독자로 걸 시버르다 시버리디 데이터디
춘 생기율 코르주기요 말이스. 삼든 저기 귤 깨주기요 말이. 가르스는 삼든 귤 깨베인 현은 뉴스임지야 삼루지. 먼저 귤 깨베인 술은 누그리스는 당고 뉴스든 알아줄 누기 여러분도 미신달 춘뇌야요 말이. 먼저 배 신달 뉴스임 같이 깨베인이 신달 가까이요 말이. 또 딘데부터 수용 연구로서는 알아줄한 연구 계획을 봐. 세상 경치슈 등 알아줄 라리어리 제빈자 디민주의 제도 뉴스임 귤 마키베 탑 가르이니 베제니 미진난 신을 펜버지 중나 삼베 삼 다가는 게 힘을 펜버지 단신 더워지 중으로 제는 삼 다가는 삼로 든지 귤긴다 미지게 토비나 미지돈데 버세아디 용그리스.
So this is particularly tricky on the mental level. You have to be extremely careful and watchful to, in order to avoid any thoughts of hurting others arise in your mind, what we call malevolence. Even the smallest of forms must be avoided. It is if we give in to the tendency to have negative thoughts, in other words, hurtful thoughts, wanting to harm others, it's us that it will hurt. If it's you that will be most hurt by entertaining these kinds of thoughts, it is they which will hurt you first and foremost. Having thoughts of malevolence arise in you has consequences, and the consequences are those that you and you alone will have to experience. Negative consequences, of course. And whereas others, when you just have that kind of thought, are untouched by it and are not hurt by it. So it's really, we need to check and observe our minds constantly so as to prevent these kinds of negative thoughts arising in it, and try to instill in our minds instead benevolent thoughts and feelings towards others, and kindness and all the others. And if we can manage to develop those kinds of thoughts, then of course our entire lives will become meaningful and be indeed useful.
대비인자 되게 슈구드만 연구요리 대 슈구드 연구요리 제비인자 대 연구요버디 시에버제니 대 슈구드 챈들 제기 인삼제 먼저 된데 코르들 때는 배 샤바진 샤바제 샤도미야부제 어떤 된데 제비는 때는 미스키우른도르스.
If these kinds of malevolent thoughts or hurtful intentions arise in our minds, it's not by chance. It's due to the habits we have formed over our countless past lives, habits that consist of yielding to this kind of thoughts, of letting these kinds of feelings arise in you, and therefore it's not easy to control them, but of course it is possible. And when these kinds of thoughts arise in you, and of course you have to first of all become aware that they're there, then you need to first realize that it's wrong and also a mistake, and do everything you can to confess it, in the sense that develop regret for what you've had, for having that feeling, and especially the determination to not carry on in that same way. In other words, that's just what we mean by confession. Stop it. Use, develop regret for that, and also the determination to not repeat the same kinds of thought. Let the same kinds of thoughts arise again.
또 삼담인데 망부 주어봤다. 강해진 삼담인데 망부 용서 때와도 가르쳐주는 수도 나란 주sem기 돈 중으리. 나란 주sem기 내당 돈 중으리스. 디하고 지규트 개침부리.
It's also therefore important to observe the fact that we realize that these situations that are problematic for us, that make us suffer, in other words, arise primarily due to our thoughts, our attitudes. In other words, the causes of the painful experiences are mainly found within ourselves.
먼저 쌤디 배가르쇼리 뉴몽배 온도 치니 르바 뉴몽배 온도 치니 멍쳐지 뉴몽냠도 저 친구 인자 딘 뉴몽 젤레들도 코르냠도 로겐 로가르지네 딜네베게 하지면도 요마르바 대용 중리스.
What it comes down to is that within our minds we have various forms of what we call disturbing mental factors, kleshas in Sanskrit, and these states of mind or mental states and attitudes and so forth are inherently harmful and problematic in the sense that they are a source of suffering for us.
다른 디든 저어째야 돼. 저어째야 뒤도 이양부치 이약슈디다 단단한 수 라발 라데요리 뒤도 제빈단 디다 저어째야 탑시지 우리.
And since they are the source of all our problems, we need to work on them, and we are in the best possible situation now to do that, to get rid ourselves all these harmful mental factors. We have all the conditions needed for it, and we must do our very best to use them for that purpose.
말은 주 생기 나네 말은 주 뜻은 슈님도 셰베 나네 말은 주 뇌경 셰바 신간주 셰베 직디긴 직 하고 고요리 다 맛이 망쳐지 키는 준데 심심 좀 골로 좀다 로망부 제버리지 망쳐지 킹기 요리 이미 사버사르향 있나 사버사르향 인자 이는 대줄이 디슈요 땅보들가 가리어스도 간주 생문나 리그멘다 간데 요르시도 르미다 숨자용 시기리 가리이네 릭직 가리이네 먼저 귤게도 먼저 심 초게 마기부 속에 세두 디난다 콘루요리 차도요리 드자요리 따세나요리 다틴리직 망보 시부시요리 대속 가투 이네 먼저 귤게네 먼저 심 초그리 슈네그리 야 텔렌도 티까지 가진지 되게 독조들이야 잠바 닝지세한다고 준주세한다고 셰럽세한다고 가투 귤게비 있는 안주 셈의 펜톡에 망부 시부주어래 근데 초보를 찍제 다 디버루데 디니 가야 마인베 초보에 서르지 파슈 서르지 룽땡 서르 가진지어래 디지 내주디 하고 지규디 개침부시부지리 담마시 상매 로주 망부 제비인자 킹기 어디니 리사바사냥 tulungi 슈비리.
Now, to be able to work on improving our minds by coming to reduce the power of kleshas, the disturbing mental states, or minds factors over us, we need to be able to recognize them within us, and that requires learning as much as we can about the different states of mind that are possible for us to have, so that we can recognize them when they occur in our minds. Many of you have already studied about the mental factors, and quite well for some of you, and it is There may be not the case of all of you, therefore, just briefly, I would like to remind you that there are essentially three sort of categories of mental factors. There are those that, when they arise in our mind, are like agitators, in the sense that they perturb our mind, disturb it, upset it, and there are many examples, but we could mention some of the most current and obvious ones, which are like anger, attachment, for example, also jealousy, and stinginess, and many others. These are a source of suffering for us. And then there are the opposite of these, which are mental factors that, when they occur in our minds, have the opposite effect. They create a feeling of well-being, of happiness, of pleasure. And there are many examples of these. There could be love, compassion, wisdom also, and many others. And they have this very positive effect on our general mental state of mind. Then there are those who are neither have a negative nor positive, in the sense that they're neutral, essentially neutral, but they can be modified to become either negative or positive, depending on what they're associated with. And so we need to be able to work in order to be able to work on improving our minds, on ourselves. We need to learn a little bit more about these, and work on being able to the point where we can recognize them when they arise within us, and so that we can encourage those that are beneficial and halt those that are harmful to us and others.
But the Jetsari Shubudil Tanda Corrigi Tesu Mod Tesu Shingi Orba. The Tikshin Basam Pento Yamari. Tikshin Basam in Digi Yamari. Digi Yamari and to Kuli Gay and do Lamsang Washing Kori. Lamsang Washing Basin, Manzu Kuli Gay and do Lamsang Washing, oh, that Coles one. Tang a Kuli Mon that is less one than the Kuli. Keju me, the Keju in a quay, they won't get Lungan Yigil Karjavine, Miguel Lel Sober, Core Corjig Lel Sober, the Sagri, Sabal Tening, Cording is only China Taria, maybe Duji, and some Lamsantish, Kajesh, should some of this issue would Keju your marry.
So it is first important to learn about these elements of our mind, to learn what their nature and so forth. But it's not enough. That's not enough. It's a first stage, but we need to, from there, train ourselves in using what we learned to recognize the different factors when they arise in our mind, be they positive or negative. And in the case of the negative factors, the kleshas, the disturbing mental factors, they are that we have to come to recognize as quickly as possible when they arise in mind, and not only recognize them, but remind ourselves of the harmful effect that they can have upon us. Initially they have effect on our mind, but what they tends to happen, though, is that when these states of mind occur, factors occur in our mind, they have enough, they prompt us to behave in ways, either physically or verbally, that are also negative, and in this way we create a negative karma, which will lead to effects that we are very undesirable, rebirth in lower forms, rebirth or simply rebirth in cyclic existence again and again. And we need to tell ourselves that if I let this thing happen again and again, I'm never going to be able to escape from cyclic existence, and I must do everything I can to stop it.
What I think is in Dortuina, Katuini rank Semdil Jarjin, Sem Jarjin Bay, Sem de Caban Roto, then the cases in Misil Keshing, some countries, Kunun countries do some Taje Tendage, Kelti Misil Keshing, Kunun till Tuja, Tuja City in Jimmy Nursing Komari, the Maimbe Jackson, so within the young Sigriva. Dindri on Kishakun, on Tandindriman, Drigimindugang, some Danta, the Drigimindusam, the best, some to Pigipa, some Shaje, the Shugudma, Kema Juche, this Javinang and the no cob henchig less agri, Nisund Pe, Dunino, Pe, less agri, some water, this chain, Chikut Kachimbushidari, Jason Sim Sunyat, Jason. Yes, he will in be soon your way. Simpson, tissue manto, but tissue mango, Chishi chas. Catu in so same to do, stay good manto, Shinda Lagi Mangochia, your Maris Canare. The Tango, this hard mango shoots are ready, and cat to Tango, and to young and young to Tango.
So, if, in other words, what is most important for us to do is to guard our minds, to observe our minds, be constantly on our guards, to check what are the kinds of thoughts are arising in our mind, and this in all circumstances. When we're about to say something, for example, we're about to speak to someone, we need to check now, what is prompting me to speak in this way? Is it anger, or could, for example, be attachment also? Not necessarily anger. There's many other possibilities of disturbing mental factors, and if you realize that's one of these, then you must remind yourself, if I let this happen, what am I going to do? I'm going to create further karmas to be propelled again and again in cyclic existence. Which is by nature suffering. I'm going to create worse yet, karmas or that will propel me into rebirth in the lower realms, and in this way we need to remind ourselves that this is inappropriate and harmful to oneself.
De l'ordre de l'irritation ou de l'attachement, etc. Il faut que nous soyons sur nos gardes pour nous dire ah non, il ne faut pas que je laisse ça se développer parce que sinon ça va à nouveau me faire accumuler des mauvais karmas, des karmas introducteurs à des renaissances dans le samsara, donc le cycle des existences conditionnées. En fait, ça ne peut être pour moi que source de nouvelles souffrances. Il faut que je stoppe ça au plus vite. Et donc, si nous sommes vigilants, nous pourrons éviter, en tout cas, que ça ne se développe. Il faut essayer de réagir le plus vite possible, et à ce moment-là, nous en serons vraiment tout à fait gagnants.
And in this case, I would like to remind you of the quotation from Shantideva, which is said, other than checking your mind, observing your mind, what kind of many activities are of any use? In other words, he was underlying the importance of the self-observation and watchfulness, and as to guard our minds from what our heart is harmful to us. Everything else is secondary compared to that activity, he was saying. And we can also quote from Lord Atisha, who in his Garland of Bodhisattva Jewels said, day and night, constantly survey your mind. So it's during the day you need, for example, you can take 3 moments to check and observe your mind and your motivation when you get up in the morning and in the middle of the day, and of course at night, and try and ensure that your mental state is one that is virtuous in nature. So he said day and night, and in other words, again and again, you need to do this self-observation, and verification. So, in brief, we don't know how long we have left to live in this life, and we will be far better off to try and live as happily as possible in whatever time we have left, and relaxed, and for that we need to verify our states of mind, and of course be aware of the fact that problems are inherent to our existence, that we will at times have to undergo things that are not pleasant, but it is when that happens, there's no point in adding worry to this already difficult situation, making it even worse. We're better off reflecting on the principle of cause and effect. Realize that this is not by chance that you're experiencing this, and not let yourself be overwhelmed by the problem, and so if you can add to this supplication, making requests to the 3 jewels, and also practices of confession and purification, and this kind of approach will, I believe, enable you to live more pleasant, much happier lives.
동의 용거를 가르치는 건도 고동이나 레데어리스 인지 민지 될 신학계 그래서 신학계 제다 친중 된지 민주의 탑시들 맞잖아 코르네 진짜 될 로스티만도 요 마르스카나리.
At the same time, as we explained the Indian master Arya Deva, there's no limit to the ocean of samsaric suffering. And how is it, O child, that who are plunged into it are not frightened? So, at the same time, we have to recognize that as long as we remain in the cyclic existence and a life, in other words, as long as we are conditioned, therefore, by our karmas and kleshas, we will inevitably be faced with problems, suffering, and difficulties on one kind or another. And this is something we have to be aware of, and this is something that should frighten us and inspire us to do everything we can to free ourselves from cyclic existence. also, this is why Tsongkhapa said in his 3 principles of the path, explained that saying that samsara is a state in which we are continually subject to one or the other of the 3 kinds of suffering. So what this is referring to is the fact that when at any moment of our existence we are continually experiencing one or the other of the kinds of sensations or feelings, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And yet, in other words, those that are neither pleasant or unpleasant. But these are what are identified as the 3 kinds of suffering in Buddhism, because what we call pleasant sensations are considered to be a form of suffering. They are not true truly pleasant, not true happiness, and so we are continually undergoing feelings that are conditioned by our karmas and kleshas, and therefore undergoing one or the other of the 3 kinds of suffering. So, as I said earlier, we are in the best time of our many existences to do everything we can to free ourselves from our personal cyclic existence, our state of existence in samsara, which is conditioned by our karmas and kleshas. We have an opportunity to meet the Buddha's teaching, which contains all the methods that we need to free ourselves from cyclic existence. They are notably the 3 higher trainings: higher training in ethical discipline, higher training in concentration, and the higher training in wisdom. And of course, there's an order to the 3. We must start from the beginning, which is to observe good ethical discipline, and many of you are doing just that, in the sense that you have, some of you have made commitments to certain kinds of, to observe different kinds of ethics or vows, and that's excellent. Otherwise, simply practicing good discipline without any particular commitments is also a possibility which is very conducive to happiness within yourself. with good ethics, you can create the causes of happiness within yourself and pass from one moment of happiness to the next. And this will have a good effect, like I said, on providing you with immediate happiness, which will be felt and observed by others around you. Others can see that you are happy in the path that you have chosen, and even if they choose not to follow it themselves, they can still have some kind of appreciation of that path because they see the positive effect of it upon yourself, which is a positive thing on itself. So I really encourage you, therefore, to do your best to start training in these 3 higher trainings, starting with ethics and then concentration and wisdom, as to lead a happy and relaxed life. So, according to our tradition, we like to give you an opportunity to ask any questions that you might have about what I've said or about anything else for that matter. It doesn't matter.
Ah oui, ce que j'avais oublié de traduire à propos de l'observance de l'éthique. Rinpoche avait dit que parmi nous, beaucoup avaient pris, en tout cas parmi les bouddhistes, des vœux et des engagements. Donc il faut prendre ça comme base pour notre observance de l'éthique, bien sûr. Vous pouvez poser votre question dans le micro, s'il vous plaît.
Il ne marche pas le micro. Là, je voulais remercier le maître. Merci beaucoup, maître. Merci.
I wanted just to thank the master. Thank you. Any questions? Any comments?
I would like to ask Rinpoche, I have seen in one of...
Would you try to speak in?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Do it in English now.
Okay. One of the 6 causes...
Dans le micro, il y a un problème de micro, on dirait. Il marche pas bien.
On
l'entend pas.
Is it better like this?
Yeah.
Yes. One of the 6 causes of the kleshas, it was a teaching of Rinpoche in French, and it was said, la rumination. I would like to ask Rinpoche what is meant by rumination. Donc, lors d'un enseignement de Rinpoche, Rinpoche expliquait parmi les causes des différentes kleshas la rumination. Qu'est-ce que vous entendez par la rumination?
C'est ce que l'on a traduit plus souvent par attention incorrecte.
Yeah, it's the more usual translation of the okay. So the question was about one of the 6 causes of the kleshas, and being rumination. And the more usual translation for this is incorrect attention. So paying wrong attention to something which encourages the klesha to arise.
조심하는 비지. 아. 근데 오늘 삼루 쩌쩌땅 들어봐 삼루가 삼루 쩌쩌땅 들어 조심하는 비지 제 인기를 들어봐. 아. 또 삼루 빼질람 산이가는 많이
So, so among the causes of the kleshas, so incorrect attention, which is the one of the factors that contribute to encourage the kleshas, the disturbing mental factors in us, is incorrect attention. So it's to think over and over again about whatever prompts this klesha within you. For example, if it's an object of attachment, is thinking more and more about the so-called attractive sides of the object of attachment. It could be your house. You might be very fond of the place you live in, and it could be that, of course, you need a roof over your head, but to think about how wonderful it is or how it could be improved all the time is only going to encourage, for example, too much attachment towards your house. That is an example of incorrect attention.
군음주 투질 때는 군좀 많은 안 주들이지요 말봐. 자빈전 상만 투시 슈규다 되는 상만 배 된데 제비 겨워팅 하는 주 창매 심신 탐적이 배 든두산기 고반은 뭐지 도봐. 단때는 된데 마중이니 마다이니 센들 전주 있음 rinpoche 좀 많이 버지 귤이게 제동어 나로나스.
So we've now been together for about an hour and 15 minutes, and that's our time is up now. I would like to thank you all for coming, and the fact that we've been able to gather today in this open house day at our institutes is thanks to a very large number of people who have been working days and days to set up the place and do all sorts of preparations, and there's lots of people involved in this, and we don't want to forget about the technicians who also help us in many ways from the point of view of the sound system and so forth. So really, I would like to give a very heartfelt thanks to all the many people, and it's really a large number who've contributed to making this day a success. And now all the efforts that you have made were done with a good motivation, and means that you created a lot of goodness, of good karma in you. And as Buddhists, for the Buddhists amongst you, the idea is to dedicate this virtue, make the wish that it may serve to allow you to become quickly a Buddha in this life, for the good of all your mother sentient beings. And if you, at least if you cannot manage that, to realize the perfect spirit of enlightenment within you.
给因什么修的团结嘛，从我修，我都是，这你给我讲。
À bientôt.
Many thanks to all of you, and see you soon.
그런 게 아마라 보고 제마지게 제마니도
Comment vous appelez-vous? Emmanuel.